So I'm just going to get started. We've got a jam-packed session here today, so I will be kicking things off here. Thank you for coming. This is Learning by Doing, Scaling Outcomes from Quebec's Circular Economy Construction Lab. That button doesn't work. Welcome. So just want to start with a land acknowledgement that I'm in Toronto, but I'm joining you today from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. This land is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, but I'm grateful to live and work and play on these lands, rich in history, culture, and stewardship. I'm acknowledging all of you attending, joining virtually from different parts of Canada, which are Indigenous territories across Canada. So I'm your, no, okay, I won't be using that. I'm your co-host, Raphael Lopukin, the Director of Strategic Initiatives at CELC, and I'm joined by Alice Rebis, who's Chargée de Projet Lab Construction from CERIEC, who I will give the floor to soon. And I just do want to take a second to give you the opportunity to provide any questions to the presenters in the Q&A button that's located at the bottom bar. And then as well, if you have any links or comments or want to engage discussion with your fellow participants, please, I would encourage you to use the chat box. Thank you. Now, just before we get started, I'm going to pass this to my colleague Kiana, who's going to give you folks a bit of a rundown about our really cool tool that we have for live translation. Thanks, Kiana.
Thanks, Raf. Yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for our webinar today. Brought to you by Québec. We're very proud to be able to share this webinar in simultaneous translation with Wordly. So what we're going to do is share this app to you all through your Zoom account. So I've just shared the invitation with you. All you have to do is click the blue open button, and it should open on the sidebar of your Zoom screen. As soon as the app starts running on your Zoom, it will automatically join the translation session. You can change the translation language that you are seeing the transcription in by clicking on the Translate To button at the top of the panel, and just click down and translate to any language of your choosing. So you should be able to now see translations in the language you've chosen, and Wordly will automatically switch speaker languages when it hears a different language, so you don't need to toggle anything else beyond choosing your selected language at first. If you cannot install the app for some reason, do not worry. There's a way to view it in the browser as well. So if you're having issues showing the app in your Zoom screen, you can click on the link that I just put into the chat box, and that should bring up a browser window version of Wordly as well. If you want to access the chat box at the same time, since the Wordly is in the same section, real estate, on your Zoom screen, you can toggle between clicking the buttons on the sidebar and accessing Wordly again through the app button in the bottom bar of your screen. That's all the time that I have for right now, but if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to put them in the chat box and I will help you there.
Great. Thanks so much, Kiana. Really exciting to have this tool. And yeah, thanks to, of course, Récit Québec, who's made this possible.
Raphael, just a second. I see in the chat that some people might have issues with seeing the presentation. So can you, if other people are having the same issue?
Seems to be just one person from what I hear.
No, I see two. The presentation. Yeah, I see a few. Okay. Some other people have the problem.
Okay, maybe Raphael, can you just unshare and share again, maybe?
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe while we're doing that, we could invite Etienne from Récit Québec just to welcome people with a couple words.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. So yeah, it's a pleasure to offer the translation. So you can listen in French, English, or even Finnish if you want to practice it. And we've been collaborating with the Lab Construction and the different project. It was super interesting. So I'm happy that you're able to discover all those experiences and projects here today. So have a very nice webinar. Et bonjour à tous.
See you, Etienne.
Just getting things, of course, reset up here. Apologies. Trying to reshare. Okay. And I'll go into a slideshow. All right. Well, hopefully this is working because one way or the other, we are moving forward. So just a quick little bit about my organization. I work for Circular Economy Leadership Canada. It's a solution space as part of a national not-for-profit charity, Generate Canada. And at CELC, we're working to connect Canada's circular economy community, both domestically and globally. So we do this by providing thought leadership, technical expertise. We do lots of collaboration, collaborative platforms. And our goal is really to accelerate systems change. So we've been working on the construction file for 3.5+ years. Really, the goal is trying to define a better business case for a circular built environment. Canada, you can check us out, please, at circulareconomyleaders.ca. And I think my colleague will add that to the chat. And now I'm just going to pass the mic to my co-host, Alice, to talk a little bit about CERIEC and the work that they're doing in circularity.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for the introduction, Raphael. So CERIEC is the Center for Intersectoral Studies and Research on the Circular Economy, and it's based at ETS, an engineering school in Montreal. CERIEC was created in September 2020 and is carrying 3 main initiatives. So the first one is the Quebec Circular Economy Research Network that is mobilizing over 300 researchers from over 50 different universities and colleges in Quebec, Canada, but also internationally. The second initiative is an online platform called Québec Circulaire that acts as a tool for knowledge sharing and networking around circular economy initiatives in Quebec. And finally, CERIEC coordinates an ecosystem of circular economy acceleration living labs that includes the construction living lab that I will be presenting in more details later on today.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So today's objectives, we're going to learn a little bit about the lab that Alice spoke about. We're going to explore some of the resources and tools that the lab has made available in French and then increasingly in English. And then just at the end, I'll talk a little bit about our effort here at CELC to develop a circular construction innovation lab. And so just the agenda, we're just in that introductory phase right now. I'll provide a little bit of context to some of the problems that we're working on here. I'll pass it to Alice to introduce the various presenters who will talk about all the excellent work that's being done by the Lab Construction. We'll have some time, of course, some chats, some QA, some discussion. We'll be pulling those from the Q&A tool at the bottom. So make sure you're putting the right content in the right place. And then I'll talk a little bit about our Circular Construction Innovation Hub and some of the exciting things that we're going to be doing at our upcoming Canadian Circular Economy Summit in Montreal in April. And then we'll close out of here and get you folks back to your regular scheduled programming. So we just have a quick audience poll. It's just a 1 word, very simple. We're going to just develop a little bit of a word cloud out of it, something to get you folks engaged on this. So in 1 word, what is the most important action needed to scale circular construction in Canada? You can either use the QR code or we'll have the link in the chat, and then you can just quickly throw that in. And then at the end, I'll just share back just what word cloud looks like. I'll just give you a quick minute to do that. And I'll let you folks keep sort of filling that out. Shouldn't take too long. I'm just going to get started here. I know we're now just a little bit behind time, so I'll go quickly through this background section. I think most of you are quite familiar with the challenges that we're trying to address with the work that the lab is doing, the work that CELC is undertaking. But just to give you a little bit of context, we know that there's a huge opportunity to improve resource efficiency in the construction industry. We know about 4 million tons of waste is generated each year, but that number is about 10 years out of date, and also there's a lot of uncertainty in the data, so it could be quite larger than that. And about 3.4% is sent, 3.4 million tons is sent to landfill each year. So only about 16% is diverted, and we know from lots of different studies that that number could be from anywhere from 80 to 90%, where that diversion could be reversed, could be flipped. And so that all that waste generates a lot of embodied carbon, about 1.8 million tons, which is close to about 500,000 cars on the road for a year burning gas. So there's a lot of low-hanging fruit and a lot of opportunity, and all that waste is actually makes Canada one of the highest per capita waste consumption I don't have those words quite right, but in 2017, actually, we ranked as one of the highest per capita in waste generation. That's the word I was looking for. And so we know that there's a problem, and there's a number of strategies, a number of you will hear about in this webinar that can help tackle this, whether it's operating in new builds, the way we design buildings to be more adaptable, reusable, incorporating reclaimed materials in new builds or as part of prefabricated components, using digital tools for better traceability and in enhancing efficiency. And then for existing buildings, there's an opportunity to, instead of demolishing, there's repurposing them, using adaptive strategies there, extending their lifespan with improved efficiency and durability, promoting zero waste renovations. And of course, at the end of life, there's the opportunity to, instead of demolishing, we're deconstructing, we're creating marketplaces and storage for reclaimed materials. And then we're also looking at those materials and see how we can, establish quality standards and recertification to be able to make these materials scalable for the construction industry. I'm not going to touch on all these benefits, but I will say there are many, both for adopting circular strategies in the construction industry or more broadly systems-wide across the Canadian economy. But I just will highlight one that, in today's kind of uncertain global economic situation, especially with the concerns around where our friends are, our neighbors are south of the border, having a source of locally sourced materials, that's really an opportunity to increase resiliency in local supply chains and local economies. And so we know that there's a significant problem. We know what the strategies are, and we know that there is a lot of benefits that are to be gained. But the question is how? And how do we bring about that change to the industry? And so I'm really excited now to pass it to Alice and her team coming from CERIEC to talk about how that they did that and what's the best way forward to tackle this really tricky systemic challenge.
Raphael, would you like to share the results of the word cloud?
I'll share it at the end. Yeah.
Perfect. Sounds good.
To move things forward. And I will stop sharing and let Alice take over. And yeah.
Thank you, Raphael. So I'm going to start sharing. And hopefully you see my screen now. So yes, it's a pleasure to be here today, and it's great to have the opportunity to present the work and the results of the construction living lab led by CERIEC. As Raphael mentioned, we have a pretty packed agenda today, so I will start by presenting the approach of the construction living lab, and then I will introduce our 4 panelists. They will each present a project they led in the construction living lab. And each presentation will be followed by a Q&A session. And at the end of the 4 presentations, we'll have the chance to have a discussion with our 4 panelists. So feel free to ask your question in the Q&A box. My colleague Hortense will answer them in writing or address them directly to our panelists in those different Q&A times. And yeah, finally, I will mention the next steps of the Construction Living Lab, and we'll give back the mic to Raphael for the closing remark. So the Construction Living Lab. The Construction Living Lab is a circular economy acceleration laboratory for the construction industry. It's implementing a living lab approach that was developed by CERIEC, and it is the first living lab of an ecosystem of 6 labs and counting. Indeed, like CERIEC's team is replicating the approach to other industries and sectors, such as food systems, textiles, and the health sector. We are currently considering and discussing labs for other sectors, such as critical materials for the energy transition, for example. So the Construction Living Lab ran for 3 years from 2021 to 2024 and was funded by Desjardins and the Ministry of Economy, Innovation and Energy of Quebec. It mobilized key stakeholders from across the construction value chain, from resource extraction to end-of-life management of building and materials. Those different stakeholders included representatives from the private sector, public institution, civil society, and research. And in the first year, the participants followed a series of 4 co-creation activities. The first workshop aimed at envisioning what a circular construction sector could look like in 20 to 25 years. And the second one identified the key barriers preventing resource circularity and hindering the vision defined in the previous workshop. The third one's goal was to brainstorm and develop solutions to overcome the barriers identified. And finally, the last step was to co-develop experimentation projects to test these solutions in real-world conditions. So that approach that I just described has enabled 19 projects to be carried out in the next 2 years. These projects have made it possible to test and demonstrate circularity strategies in the real context of the Quebec construction industry. Those projects were led by a group of project leaders from across the industry and researchers from different disciplines: architecture, engineering, urban planning, law, and regulations. Today, you will have the chance to meet 4 of them, but in total, the lab mobilized over 300 participants from almost 130 organizations. The objective of the Construction Lab is really to accelerate the transition to a circular economy of the construction sector. Therefore, the 19 projects were also aiming to develop hands-on tools that would allow other players to implement circular strategies in their practice. In that same mindset, we put a lot of efforts in developing a knowledge transfer strategy in order to make the learnings from the 19 experimentation projects accessible. So today I highlight here 2 main resources that are available to you. First, a summary of the 19 projects, which has been fully translated into English. And second, the online platform Construction Circulaire, which displays over 70 resources in French and about 10 in English. We also have an ongoing project with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, for which we are preparing 5 project sheets, both in French and in English, focusing on the municipal role in some of the Construction Labs projects. FCM actually just published today the first one, so Hortense is going to share the link for that project sheet in the chat. The last thing I want to share with you today is this diagram. So it shows how the 19 projects fit into different stages in the building value chain, from procurement to design to material selection and construction itself. And then we have the operation of the building, and finally is the construction. Each arrow represents one of the lab's projects showing which circular economy strategies the project implements and how it impacts different stages of the value chain. Most of the projects were implemented at the building level, but some worked at the urban system level as well. Therefore, this diagram really shows how the lab's projects explored all the stages of the life cycle and all categories of strategies. And I wanted to show you this diagram because we believe that the transition to a circular economy requires a systemic approach and depends on the unprecedented collaboration between key stakeholders. So the Living Lab approach allowed to act at several levels of the life cycle and also allowed to better anticipate the impacts actions may have on the rest of the value chain. It provided a neutral science-based space for stakeholders to work collaboratively in order to break existing silos. So without further ado, here are the 4 projects that will be presented today. We picked them as their scope is transferable to the rest of Canada and internationally and are not Quebec specific. Also, they generated deliverables that are available in English, and authors will send the links to those resources in the chat during the presentation. So now let me introduce you to our panelists. First, we will have Saba Bayena, who is a PhD candidate at École de technologie supérieure in Montreal, Quebec. She worked on the lab's project focusing on developing an assessment tool for the potential of adaptability and disassembly of construction projects. Then Liane Saye, who is a sustainability engineer at Arup Canada with a background in structural engineering for building. She led the lab's project that developed a life cycle assessment methodology that challenges traditional LCA methods to incorporate circular strategies. Third, we'll have Éric Poirier, who is a professor at the construction engineering department at École de technologie supérieure. And his main focus in the lab was a material traceability framework to support tracking of materials across projects, supporting reuse and compliance with circularity goals. And finally, we have Nathalie Drapeau, who is the director of the Gaspésie Intermunicipal Waste Treatment Board. And with the project team, she developed a deconstruction process optimization toolkit that enhances logistics for material recovery in renovation and deconstruction projects. So welcome to all of you, and thank you for being here with us today. And now I will invite Saba to put her camera on, and I will pass the slides for you, Saba.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar today, and I'm very happy to present this project to you. The project supervised by Professor Ivanka Yordanova and Professor Beshara Hilal. The topic of this project is design for adaptability of the building to contribute circular economy. In construction sector, there are many theories that trying to address circular economy objectives, but in this project we focused on design for adaptability. As you can see here, from 1980s, many theories are proposed, and in recent years we are at the we received to design for adaptability of the building. Adaptability covers all the rest of these theories and also fill all the gaps of those theories. But what's the meaning of adaptability? Adaptability is the ability of a building to give this opportunity to the occupants or stakeholders to change their buildings based on their needs, based on the market, and with minimum amount of disruption. The project objectives is increasing our knowledge about design for adaptability and create a conceptual framework to have a comprehensive strategies, principles, and maybe in future policymakers, policies. And design in as and also another objective of this project is design an assessment tool to evaluate existing or new design buildings. Well, but design to the circular economy. As Rafael mentioned, circular economy tries to minimize the waste of material and maximize the efficiency of the buildings, components, or system, and prolonging the lifespan of, for example, building. In the right side, we have a theory which is related to Stuart brands. And there are two columns. In the first columns, we have different layers. Stuart Brand divided the building to different layers like space plan, services, scheme. And in the second column, he allocated different lifespan to each of these layers. It means each of these layers has different frequency of changes. For example, for services, we can see the frequency of changes is between 5 and 30 years, which is more than, for example, a structure, which is in between 60 and 200. So by prolonging the life of each of these layers, we can keep the buildings in use, and we can contribute to the circular economy. Many theories are proposed about circular economy. Here we have a figure which is related to Ellen MacArthur Foundation. There are 9 R's. If you go up from R9 to R0, the circularity increase and transform from linear economy to the circular economy. And we had an interview with experts, and based on the result of our interview, we found that there is a lack of knowledge about circular economy and design for adaptability in construction sectors. But after explaining the concepts, they believe that following the R9, R4, R5, and R3, which is related to repair, refurbish, and reuse, are the most effective strategies in circular economy in construction sectors. And based on regarding to the sharing layers theory and result of our interviews, we found the base of the framework. And next slide. Thank you. And we have in our framework, we have these titles for all of layers. Here, for example, we have a service. We have services, and for each layer, we have different criteria. For example, here I have access and also installation. And for each of them, we have sub-criteria. It narrowed down to sub-criteria. For example, for insulation, we have moisture control, for example, or fire safety. And it shows how each of these sub-criteria or criteria can contribute to the circular economy, as you can see and in the title of the table, and contribution of each of these sub-criteria to ease of change. It means it tries to contribute to the adaptability of the building. And to evaluate the framework, and here we have another table which is related to Gaston Miron library. In the first interviews, we asked stakeholders to introduce us some real study, and one of them was library of Gaston Miron, which is in Quebec. And we prepared some questions for each of sub-criteria, and we consider best condition and the worst condition. And we ask in the second interviews, we ask them to give their rates to each of these sub-criteria. And it is still in progress. It's not finished, and the evaluation part is still going on. And let's see what's but finally, as a result of literature review and both interviews, we found that there is a lack. It was very serious that there is a lack of knowledge between engineers, architects, mechanical engineers, and even owners of the buildings. So this framework contribute to increase their knowledge about circular economy and also adaptability. And I would be happy if I receive any comments from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Saba. So feel free to add your question in the chat if you have any. I have a comment from Corey from the FCM, who's saying the Green Municipal Fund is thinking a lot about retrofitting versus new building and comparing materials impact. And another one, Saba, is has there ever been discussion around creating an agency that would act as an assessor, buyer, broker, seller of used building materials? I don't think this relates really to your project, so I will maybe let Hortense
I cannot see the questions.
Reply to this. Okay, so if any questions come up later, you'll still have time to ask Saba more questions. So thank you so much, Saba, for your presentation.
Can I answer or?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, we have some real studies, but we don't have wood-based building exactly. But in following step, we will focus on it actually, because in Canada we have lots of wooden constructions. But no, we don't have any case study about it.
There's another question that's the lack of knowledge is among a wide variety of roles. How can this easily be answers to all of them?
If I understand your question very well, or I don't know, but I think we face to the lack of regulations and policy in this field, and we try to develop something like framework or evaluation method for existed buildings or a new design building to help the policymakers to evaluate these buildings, the rate of circularity or the adaptability of these buildings.
Thank you, Saba. And yeah, there's a comment that says, and I agree that I think like the comment says, very interested to see how this framework can lead to practical example for building design for adaptability. And I think like the projects that the project that you did is really also like mobilizing the industry into like, so I know that a lot of the people you talk to were implementing some adaptability strategies without really knowing they were doing it. So in order for it to like be more widespread, you need to build this framework and for people to understand it better, to do it better too.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Alice, there are a few other questions in the Q&A box as well.
Okay, I think we're gonna move on to the next project. We've used the time for this one, but I'll let Hortense answer them in writing. Yeah. Thank you so much, Saba. We'll now invite Liane to come present.
Yes, hello. Okay, so yeah, thank you for joining today. And so I'll be presenting on the Circular LCA project. So this project was a research study on how to apply circularity in the life cycle assessments of buildings. And so as the title suggests, there are two main components to this research. The first one being the concept of circularity, and the second one being the life cycle assessment, and specifically at the buildings level. So the concept of circularity, as it was shared previously in this webinar, it does encompass several strategies, such as reusing materials, designing for deconstruction, and adapting and renovating existing buildings. So the field is quite vast, but essentially circularity is a way to decarbonize from an embodied carbon perspective by focusing on materials and construction. When it comes to the life cycle assessment, it is a linear method for attributing and accounting for a building's environmental impacts over its life cycle stages. It is increasingly in demand and required for projects, especially for certification purposes like LEED. So the aim of the research project was to examine how these two components align with the available standards and guidelines, while also identifying issues and gaps. We also wanted to identify what needs to be done to better integrate a building's circularity with the life cycle assessment. And we wanted to propose a practical and more harmonized approach and methodology to account for circular strategies and life cycle assessments. And overall, we wanted to demonstrate the contribution of circular economy strategies to reduce carbon emissions for private and public owners. So this project was carried out by ERP and ETS with the technical support of Groupe AGECO and Studio Carbon. So on the second slide, regarding the key learnings. So regarding the definition of circularity, the aim was not to redefine what circularity means. There are several frameworks that already exist, such as the Circular Buildings Toolkit from ERP and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And so instead, the goal was to restructure the definition so that it aligns with the life cycle assessment methodology. So for this research, we defined 3 categories of strategies. Since the life cycle assessment is an outcome-based method, the category groups together strategies that lead to similar outcomes or impacts rather than those that share a similar design approach. So the categories are, the first one is strategies that share materials across systems. So that includes the use of recycled materials and reused components, design for deconstruction, renovation of existing buildings. The second category is strategies that increase building utilization. So that can be designed for longevity or designed for spatial intensification. And the third group is strategies that reduce material impacts. So that can be material sobriety and material selection, and the use of materials that store biogenic carbon. So on the third slide, the traditional life cycle assessment thus poses 2 challenges, the one being linearity and the second one being flexibility. So in terms of linearity, as described earlier, the life cycle assessment is a linear process where materials have a limited lifespan and system boundaries that are clearly defined. And so a building has a beginning and an end. And so the challenge when it comes to circular economy is as the concepts extend beyond the system boundaries, such as in deconstruction, reuse, and renovation, it becomes more difficult to assess them. So while the module D does exist to address out-of-system benefits and burdens, it is not sufficient to address circular strategies. Then the second challenge with traditional life cycle assessments is the concept of flexibility. So life cycle assessments are quite flexible. So even though there are standards that guide the life cycle assessment practice, we can choose the criteria, the inputs, and the limits of our life cycle assessment. So consequently, we can obtain very different results depending on the objectives of the LCA and the tools that are being used. So the report that we provided serves as a tool to guide professionals on how to adapt and properly define the limits of their life cycle assessments and their reference projects to be able to model and account for the impact of circular strategies. So for each category and strategy that I presented earlier, the report examines the different elements that can influence the life cycle assessment practice, and it proposes methodologies or ideas for incorporating circular strategies. So the aim of why did we do this research is really to get the conversation going, to challenge the status quo when it comes to life cycle assessments, to avoid greenwashing, and to provide a practical guide that practitioners can refer to. Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne. That's very good how how you concluded the project, because I think it's very important that we are able to quantify the impacts of the circular strategies that we implement. Do we have a question? So we do have a question in the chat for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a long one and it sounds very specific. So maybe it's better if you read it
Yeah,
yourself.
I can take the time.
I think it's a technical question on how some
Mhm.
modules on LCA should be used. So I don't know if you want to reply now or
Yeah, and I think maybe my quick reply is that there are many ways to approach this, and this is what we tackle in the report, is that we highlight that there are different methods and that we probably suggest one that is more aligned with the industry. But yes, it is a tricky one, and I think that just highlights the complexity of life cycle assessments and circular strategies, is that things can be accounted in different life cycle stages, but if we all do things differently, then we will all come with a different result.
Mm-hmm.
But I can try and answer by chat as well.
Thank you, Leanne. We'll just wait a few more minutes in case some more questions come in.
there was a question. Oh, they're coming in.
Mhm.
Yeah, so following up to your reply, Brad suggested that we need to start agreeing on how to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think
you're going to agree to.
Yeah, we for sure need to start agreeing, but I think we also need to be able to start agreeing, we need to be transparent in how we report our results as well. So when we report our life cycle assessments, I think we need to be very clear on what was accounted, what were our limits, what were the constraints. And I think based on that transparent information, we're going to be able to understand, can we compare these different LCAs or not, or how does this project compare to the baseline scenario? Or yeah.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Hortense.
Yeah, there was also a comment rather than a question from Elga saying that these limits do challenges multiple cycles, go far beyond the built environment. So any progress on the methodology is very welcome and no doubt will find broader use. So I think it sort of gave praise to, you know, the extent of your work and how useful it is to be working on these methodologies. And I think that's also true of other tools other than LCAs, that we need to be able to integrate circularity in other tools and methods. There was another question about how we can include circularity also in the business case for the real estate sector, and we definitely need to be collectively working on this.
Yep.
I have a final question. I mean, I have a question for you, Leanne, too.
Oh no.
But do you think that like the norms and the different methodology for LCAs that are available, do you think there are like working groups that are trying to modify those approaches? Like, is there like, do you think as a next step it would be relevant to approach the organizations that are defining the LCA methodology with the result of this project?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't know about the groups responsible, but the way they're written is that there could be room for interpretation, and maybe that makes it difficult for actual practitioners to action standards. So yeah, I think it would benefit to reach out to those ISO and EN standards and get their point of view as well.
Thank you. And there's a last question that will be the last one we'll take today for your presentation. But would the economic benefit not be a stronger denominator for applying circularity rather than embodied carbon?
I think it's good to have different metrics. So I think embodied carbon is one. And this is also the limit of our research report, is that we've limited the research to embodied carbon, whereas the life cycle assessment, like a complete LCA, does look at many other different environmental impacts, but we had to put constraints to our own research. And so for sure, the economic benefit is something to look into, but I think that's just beyond what we could offer for this project.
Yeah, and I think it also maybe raises the question of like integrating the environmental costs of certain economic choices sometimes. So if we were able to integrate that cost in the overall cost of a project, maybe it will give different result and different decision making in the process too. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Leanne. So
thank you.
We will now move on with Eric's presentation. If you can put your camera on, I'll pass the slides for you.
All right, we'll have it. I'm sorry, I'm in actually a corridor, so hopefully there's not going to be too much noise, and hopefully you hear me well. Okay. Yeah, okay. I see Alice. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. So they just decided to have a team meeting here right beside me, so I'm going to apologize. So here to talk about our project that was around material traceability. I think, of course, if we say circular economy, traceability is a key component. And our basic, our premise was that, essentially what enables traceability is data. So my line of work or research is all around the concepts of digital threading, digital twinning, building information modeling, and digitalization of supply chains in the construction industry. And one concept that is well sort of developed in other domains, such as food and healthcare and to a certain extent mining and so forth, this notion of traceability. So we were questioning, basically understanding how could we implement some form of data or traceability in the built asset industry to enable circular economy. So our project objectives was to basically develop or highlight the strategies that would support the circular economy through definition of use cases. So one thing is when we went through a round of trying ideation and understanding what is traceability and what does it serve for, essentially we sort of understand what it means, but it is a fluffy concept. It means many things to different people. So we had to really anchor it in specific use cases to really go into depth around traceability and what it means for circular economy in the built asset industry. Based on that definition, we then went to formalize the processes and practices supporting this implementation of strategies to enable circular traceability and circularity, and then look at a framework to actually enable that, and with the piloting. So I had my team of PhD students, two master's students, so Adam, Saman, and Maysam, and we had technical partners with the group of Adaptable. Liane was part of the group, and we basically piloted the project on a smaller project, a duplex, to see that it's not just large projects that can benefit from digitalization, but also smaller projects. So here you see one of the use cases that we looked at. I mean, this is a pretty basic use case where we're looking at trying to reuse a material. I mean, it's the basis of what we're doing. Reuse a material that would have been installed, and obtaining data that would support its reuse. So the first thing, of course, in that case is identifying what is the products that are being targeted for reuse. Then have a process, either if you're actually refurbishing or upcycling a material is going through a process, and then redefining or characterizing that material, recharacterizing the information with that, and then reintegrating that into a lifecycle database. So we have a sort of an illustration. If you go to the next slide, we tested it. Now, there's a couple of challenges here, of course. One is access to data. I think that's one of the key concerns, and management of that data. In the built asset industry, there are a number of standards that have emerged, ISO 19650 to name one. There are frameworks for open data, open data schemas that would enable interoperability. So these questions of persistent data, maintenance of this data, and also interoperability between the different platforms, understanding that over the life cycle of an asset, we're not going to be using a single database or a single tool. We'll be using many tools. So this was this project around a duplex, and trying to look at how do we transact and exchange information across sources. And then we didn't have a chance to, given the time frame, but we're talking about maintaining these information assets over decades, over the life cycle of an asset, and that's going to be the next sort of big challenge. So in this case, what we are showing is interoperability between the design platform, which is Rhino, using Speckle as a web-based intermediary to then send and receive towards Revit, which was allowing us to do the data extraction, try to identify sort of circularity indicators in this case, and evaluate potential for circularity. What we of course had to come to terms with was the fact that we had to go to the duplex and then characterize the materials there. This was a duplex that was built in the early 1900s. So there was a lot of assumptions about the materials, and sort of develop that database, and then to have it persistent is a real challenge. So if you go to the next slide, so you can see sort of using sort of the part of the geometric model as that database that contains information about the materials that are there. And so this is a very basic application, working on that through these interoperability tools that would help distribute this data to other software ecosystems. One thing is looking at where do we have data on, for instance, and Leanne was talking about carbon footprint. Where do we have data on sort of material life cycles? What happens around maintenance and management? What happens around certification? And each of these points of data exist in different data sources. And so using this centralized platform that was Speckle, in this case, we were trying to connect the dots. We didn't go as far as we would have liked, but at least showing that there's a proof of concept that we can make it work. We can use a centralized hub to connect to these different data sources based on a model of an asset is potentially the way to go. BIM, building information modeling, and now digital twins show great promise in digitalizing the built asset industry and the built environment. We'll be able to basically host, maintain that data over many years. These are questions that are persistent, that are continuing, that we are trying to answer. In our case, we just highlighted these challenges. So next slide. So basically, the essence of our project was around to say, okay, well, here we have these tools, we have we need this data to make informed decisions. Do we reuse an asset? Do we reuse a component? If we want to reuse that component, what happened to it? Is it certifiable, et cetera, et cetera? So we had to be able to really articulate these components of asset lifecycle decision making through this traceability framework, which is what was proposed. There's if you want to learn more about this framework, it's been published. It's available in the links. So in terms of the takeaways, I think we're dealing with digitalization of our built asset industry is progressing. I've been doing this for the better part almost 20 years now. It's slow going. We need government bodies to start mandating BIM and digital ways of working. We worked on a residential sector is another sector that has low levels of digitalization. And so, small scale projects sometimes don't fit. So we're hoping to see an uptake in digitalization. Interoperability is another concern, although that's being worked on at the international level with organizations such as Building Smart International. So we're actually developing schemas and ways to exchange data and so forth. The absence of reliable data, it's always going to come back. If you're doing LCA, if you're doing carbon, if you're doing, anything, costing, anything, it's always reliable data. So if we're looking at reusing components and recertifying materials and reusing a structure, what is the data that we need in 50, 75 years to do that? That'll always be the challenge. We need to have data governance, data curation policies. Who's responsible for that data? The owner is. And so as much as they maintain their assets, they're going to have to maintain their databases. So this is a key aspect. And I think it takes a life cycle view. I think this is nothing new to anybody, but we have to look at beyond just the CapEx, just the development stage, the planning stage, construction. It has to go throughout operations and into deconstruction, and that was something that Saba mentioned in terms of actually developing design for disassemblies, solutions, and so forth. So we have to have this whole life cycle approach, and that's supported through clear and consistent data and interoperability of tools and technologies. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. There's a lot of questions coming in the chat. Hortense, if you want to.
Yeah, I don't know how much time we have. We have at least 3 questions. Maybe some of them can be responded by Eric in the chat at some point if we're running out of time.
Sure.
I can share one to start with. Did the traceability project explore the prospects of material passport systems, especially in relation to modular construction?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a big section on material passports, and now the NRC has a digital product passports. The Europeans have been going gung-ho on material passports for a long time. We looked at the Buildings and Material Bank, the BAM project. There's the Madaster projects. So there's a bunch of projects in the European Union. There's some now that are picking up on our side of the pond with, like I said, the NRC. For sure, digital product passports is going to be key in enabling traceability and hoping to see the fact. I mean, they're figuring a lot of stuff out, and this is where Groupe Optel. So traceability, for instance, in the batteries domain, in the food domain, they have frameworks, they have tools. Is it a question about adapting those tools to to the built environment? Is the digital product passport sort of that response? Probably. What we're lacking in North America and in Canada, and I think I'll take this little moment to say that with everything that's going on, with the economic uncertainty and this transition, looking to buy Canadian, traceability becomes paramount. Like, it goes beyond circular economy is going to be, I think, hopefully a byproduct. And when we think about these things, it's going to come into place. But understanding where materials are coming from, where products are coming from, who are the manufacturers, it just became front and center. So we've run up a sort of a small cell here in Quebec with industry practitioners and everything, and trying to start organizing the manufacturing and the supply chain, and traceability is that central point. So digital product passports will be part of that discussion. And I'm hoping to see that conversation on a national scale. I think there's a huge opportunity here to enable these circular economy initiatives through relooking at our Canadian production, Canadian manufacturing, and provenance of materials. So short answer, yes, material passports have been looked at and are important.
Thank you. Alice, I don't know if you want to keep going or if you want another question, but I'm looking at the time and I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I think that we should keep going, and then we'll
Okay.
take some extra questions at the end. Especially there's one for Liane and Eric, so we can take it at the final Q&A. So thank you so much, Eric. I will now invite Natalie to come join us.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so my project, our project was a deconstruction process optimization. Day to day, we have to deal with a big amount of materials that are coming from construction, renovation, or demolition field, and they are consumed as single-use resources. So the first objective that we had in our project was, how can we extend the lifespan of resource through reuse of the materials from the construction of municipal buildings? And we had the chance to work on a real project, because we had 5 buildings to deal with. And we had the chance to work with CERIEC and ETS on that project. We had to, another objective was how can we help every stakeholders to go to deconstruction instead of demolition. So we decided to develop the mapping of the current deconstruction processes, just to get to a toolbox at final, and it could help some other stakeholders to take decision to change their way to do things. And the third objective was to optimize the supply chain. We wanted to document the result of this project, because with result and material and toolbox, you can convince stakeholders again to take the good decision and go in the water, go further with the deconstruction and do things differently. In the project, we had the chance to work with the team of TESEDA. They developed the part, the mapping and the research things, and I had the chance to work on the field. Okay, the other slide, maybe. Okay, so we had the two deconstructed two sites. 5 buildings. We worked with the contractor that was willing. We took the time to give some good formation to the employees. It's an important part of the project, because at the beginning for them, a 2x4 was only a material that was going to the landfill or the eco-center, but after 3 days, it was a resource that we could maybe reuse. So the formation made the difference. That project permit us to, we reached 70% of reused material from the deconstruction of these 5 buildings, 4 buildings at least, because the other one was on the site. It was more difficult because it was a building that was abandoned for 10 years. So only the pigeon and the birds like this building. It was difficult to get to obtain a lot of good material, but anyway, it was a good experience too, and we were able to get a good observation from that project that we realized. On social side, the citizen, they were actually with the material that we put on the side, we conditioned that material, removed nails, classified and everything. And the citizen were coming and they bought that material at 50% of the cost market. So the citizen were very impressed with the result, and they realized that it was a good idea to reuse the material and extend the lifespan of these material. On technical side, I think a pilot project like this permit to do the demonstration to the contractor. He can believe that it's possible, and for the client or the stakeholders, they can be more convinced with a realization on the field like that, with real experience on the field. Environmental, we were very satisfied with the result, because first, we succeed to reach 70% first, but we were able to reduce the landfill or the use of the eco-center, because it costs something to use the eco-center, and to reduce the transportation of the material. So it was the best equation for us. And finally, economically, we were able to compare the demolition way and the deconstruction way, and we were at even cost for one to another. Because when you do the deconstruction, yes, it takes a little bit more time, but you have less impact on the transport and manipulation of the material after that. And we were able to realize a real good toolbox with the team, with Hortense and his team, and Tesseda. And that toolbox is, I hope it's gonna help. It's going to help other municipalities or private to be inspired and to go through a project of deconstruction. For us, it was the goal with the toolbox. The next slide. So for us, the deconstruction of a building, it has a future if we are able to convince, to change the approach upstreams. We need a commitment of the work donors, and like municipalities or private, and the toolbox is our way. It's our way to convince them and to tell them, well, it's not that complicated. They go and be courageous. When it's important to have a good collaboration. The mapping mapping the process help us to identify the goals, the problem that we had, and the solution that we were able to propose with these to these issues, and have this collaborative approach. It was the good way to demonstrate that we have to work this kind of project and team, because if we don't go further end to end, we won't be able to reach or to change our way to do things, and I think we don't have any choice before. When we look at the big piles of material that we receive on our site, we have to change our way to do things. So that's about it. A little bit last. Sorry, my English is not maybe that that good. I hope I was not too confused.
It was great, Nathalie. Thank you for this very inspiring project. I'm sure the work will be helpful to a lot of organizations. Hortense, are there any questions in the Q&A box?
Yeah, there's a ton of questions, both for Nathalie and for more general discussion. A couple for Nathalie first. There was a question asking about the quality of reused materials and the 70% you mentioned, which part of this was actually reused. Maybe you can answer that first.
Yes, the quality of the material was actually very good, because all the wood that we were able to take from the inside of the buildings, it was still in very good condition. The contractor, how he proceeded to permitted us to offer a good material, because he was taking the material layers by layers, and for the outside layers, like on the walls and on the roof, and for the walls and the floor and the roof, he cut it by pieces, by sections, I mean. And the sections were like the first picture that we saw on the presentation, you know. And we put these sections on the side, and our conditioning team was able to prepare that material. So the citizens were very happy about that material. The 70% actually, yes, it was a very good percentage. I'm not sure that we can reach that in every project, but what I'm always saying is, if you reach 4%, it's 4%, and 10%, it's 10%. I mean, it's the part that you don't manipulate on your landfill or on your eco center, and you can just extend the lifespan of that percentage. That's good enough for us.
Thanks. Maybe just a few words before we carry on the jobs that were created, or I mean in your project, and maybe a sense of a more general idea, although Paul has already put a lot of resources in this, but Nathalie, you had a dedicated deconstruction and conditioning team, right?
Yes, we were very motivated. Actually, I was always on the field, but it was, I think there was a kind of a emotional input in that project. As I said before, when you see on the field what is the real result, that all material that you just take in your hand. I mean, and after that, when you share that with the team, I was talking about the CERIEC, and Hortense, we did a social, how do you say that?
A board game.
a board game. We did a board game. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to really like that kind of a project to do a board game. But with the ETS, the cane on the field, the contractor, the municipalities, the employees, the citizen, everyone was very positive about that. And since then, so since 2023, I have 4 more contractors that called us asking, well, we want to do that kind of project. Can you just give us some advice? A lot of municipalities called us to make some just exchange with them, share the toolkit. So I don't know if I answered all the question very specifically.
Well, there's many
but
more questions in the
Yeah.
chat, in the Q&A box. Maybe if you
Yeah.
have a chance, you can look at them.
Okay.
But just to mention that someone mentioned that your English is great, so nothing to
Thank
worry
you.
about.
Thank you.
Alice, do you want to move on to more general questions, or are we running out of time already?
If there's one already in the chat, I think for Liane and Eric, so maybe we could get that one. And if anyone else has more general questions to our 4 panelists, we can just take that one and then we'll move on very quickly for the end of the webinar.
Okay, I can read the question for both Liane and Eric. How does the digital twin get updated for their LCA as we find out more about all materials for the next few decades? And there's something that's been specified under it. I don't know if you can see it, Liane and Eric.
Yeah, I can attempt on my side in terms of, I mean, digital twins are definitely a hot topic. What does it mean? You know, material data, aside from sort of wear and sporadic maintenance, can get updated. I mean, do you need a digital twin? You know, and if we look at the definition of a digital twin, it's a perfectly coupled physical and digital artifact, and the digital artifact gets updated with sensors based on the physical performance, and that in turn will inform the asset, and so we'll see behavior be informed. So if we're just talking more around how do you maintain a database throughout an asset's life cycle, and you know, there's CMMS tools, there's a bunch of tools that exist currently. I would expect that, you know, once the material is there, it's installed, aside from, like I said, the wear and tear and the sort of all the work that you're doing on it for refurbishing and so forth will trigger updating of that database. Will the material, you know, if you install it and you leave it there, you know, will there be new data that's generated? I mean, that's the question, and that goes to sort of developing information management guidelines and protocols within built asset owners to be able to support that, you know, updating and so forth. There's going to be tremendous value, and I think that's one of the big elements here, is the value of materials when they come to end of life. Right now, we don't know what we have in our buildings, and we don't know the condition. Like, we sort of know we have the conditions of what we can see, but so to be able to maintain that and to be able to actually support that and have an assessment and look at, you know, what was the expended carbon that, or the operational carbon that was, you know, used or during the life cycle and so forth. These are all things that can be put into an argument to sell, to monetize this stuff. So the link between digital twin, you know, data updating, data curation, and sort of maintaining life cycle assessment, for sure, you know, we'll be able to get data and actually confirm the hypothesis that we have, and maybe Liane can speak to that.
Sorry, Eric, we had to interrupt you, but we really need to get moving. We have a lot.
Yep.
Sure. Thank you for your reply, and Liane, if you want to reply to the question from your perspective of LCA in the chat, I think the person who asked the question would be very grateful. Sorry to cut everything short, but we really wanna to be able to also the work that that CELC is preparing in the construction sector for the rest of Canada. And just before a quick word just before giving the mic back to Raphaël. So we're also in Quebec working on a follow-up for the construction living lab. So we're currently looking for funding to continue our work based on 3 main work streams. So like continue support the industry with co-creation research projects, transfer the learnings of the first iteration of the lab in Quebec and across Canada like we're doing today. And finally, continue to connect the key players and coordinate a collaborative and innovating thinking space. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to our 4 panelists. We had a lot to cover in a very short amount of time, but you did really great. And given the number of questions we've had in the chat, it's certainly triggered a lot of interest. So give it back the presentation to you, Raphaël. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks so much, Alice. I'll just get my slides going here, and I'll realize we're just in the final bit here, so I will just touch on things kind of briefly here. But I really appreciate the presentations and everything, all the work that you folks have been doing, and really would encourage support for the continuation of the work that you're doing. So while CERIEC was taking this learning by doing approach, CELC was also working on this problem. We were researching and working with the industry for 3.5 years and convening, and it kind of resulted in 2 major recent research reports in partnership with the CSA group. One kind of looking at the opportunities and the gaps, and then another one that proposed a strategic framework for action. And so that framework, it was, something that looked at it from a systemic problem, like how do we tackle this chicken or egg issue? The regulations aren't in place, the economics don't make sense, there isn't a lot of awareness, projects are too costly. And it really proposed 3 kind of overlapping activities, building strategic partners, kind of setting the groundwork, kind of removing frictions, and then launching demonstration projects, showing scalability and how we can move these sort of boutique to broader adoption. See a lot of overlap in the work that CERIEC did and is still doing. And then finally, how do we amplify the success, tell these stories, develop the tools and guides, and then share them in activities like we're doing today. And so CELC is proposing the development of a new initiative called the Circular Construction Innovation Hub, and it would tackle the 3 key overlapping areas that's like aligned with the framework. Is this collaboration and knowledge sharing, so really bringing people together and trying to remove those systemic barriers, sharing and learning. And then focusing on innovation, those pilot projects and test beds like we were hearing about today, and then getting those insights and tools and guides and sharing them more broadly. And so we had this framework, the strategic framework for action, and we had multiple workshops, and we've developed a bit of a vision and mission. That's all about future-proofing the future construction and future-proofing the construction real estate industry, make it more efficient, more resilient. And we would do this through our main areas of activity would be fostering that collaboration, that driving that innovation, and scaling the impact. And the impact we would, driving down carbon emissions, reducing waste, making the industry more resilient, and making it cost effective as well. And so we've proposed a framework here for this convening, this collaboration, a multi-stakeholder coalition of folks from industry, government, nonprofit, academia coming together. We'd have a steering committee to help drive the change. We have a number of technical committees that would help provide that expertise in policy and standards, in training. And then we'd really focus on these demonstration projects and have the full partners coming together in these working groups all around these projects that would help really tackle these systemic barriers that we've talked about today. And so we've formed a strategic a steering committee. We're meeting actually next week, our first one, a number of leading government partners and associations, professional bodies, leading organization. We have a number of preliminary partners, and a number of them have submitted some really interesting projects that are help tackling this across the country. And so this collaboration is really starting to come together so that we can focus on the innovation and solving these tough systemic barriers, which we're calling innovation challenges. And so we worked with our stakeholders to develop a long list of really these barriers that are out there, and then devising these innovation challenges to solve those barriers. And we come down to a short list that's tackling some of the key areas in our 3 work streams, whether it's the built environment, existing buildings, or end of life and material reuse. And we have a number of projects that, as mentioned, have just been put forward, and we're looking to evaluate those with the goal of selecting a handful to work with under the hub from across the country. And so the hub would provide the services of, helping support the insights and those lessons learned that we can celebrate and win, the guides, the tools, the case studies. We're looking at developing a knowledge sharing hub so we can have that collaboration. And then further, we would work with the projects to help with partnership development and finding matching funding, and then have access to these technical committees and this sort of knowledge sharing that would happen, and partnership development that would happen organically, and also through our convening of meetings that would occur. And so the goal is then to kind of spiral that system change out with the hub and then our partners all working to mobilize the industry and scale these solutions and then drive to supportive policy changes, and then strengthen that underlying infrastructure that is so key in order to create that systems change that we need. And so today, we find ourselves just in our second phase. We've convened 2 very large stakeholder sessions where we had lots of great feedback to shape the vision and goals of some of what you've heard today and the innovation challenges. And now we're setting up the steering committee. We're also in a position seeking core funding to be able to provide these services. So we know that there's a lot of opportunity here, and I think you've heard from a number of people here about the importance of putting some financing behind that in order to drive this change. And so we have our steering committee coming up, and our goal is to have a good 10 projects from a number of different locations or spokes on the hub launching this year, and to start gathering that data. And then moving into 2027 and beyond, we're looking to expand the number of challenges that we have and grow the network from there. And so we're just looking at a few locations in Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, ideally partnering with our friends at CERIEC to enable the hub in Montreal. They're doing excellent work there, and we are here to support them. And looking to kickstart some of this work in Toronto and in Vancouver, in discussion with a number of partners to help start that core support there. So that was brief. We've just got a couple minutes left. I'm just going to take just a couple minutes here to just talk a little bit about our upcoming Canadian Circular Economy Summit that's occurring in Montreal in April, the 15th to the 16th, right before the Easter long weekend. So come on down. It's going to be a great time. We have over 800 delegates. The full list of activities and program is listed on the website, which we'll share in the chat, circulareconomysummit.ca. And just with the built environment, we have a number of really exciting activities. So there's going to be a municipal-focused event on the 15th, really looking at policies and incentives and how we can drive that circular innovation there. Big one on the 16th, which I'll be, I believe, moderating parts of it, and Hortense as well, which is really exciting. We're going to have 2 panels, one with a global focus and one more locally focused. And then as well, we'll be trying to tackle some of these projects that we're interested in looking at as part of the hub's activities. And then there'll be a networking event with AirUp later, just right after. So thank you to them for hosting that. And then on the 17th, we'll have another session looking at recycled aggregates in road construction. There's a huge opportunity for that. I think there'd be a lot of really positive environmental benefits to communities if we can slow down some of the resource extraction there and just reuse. There's a lot of opportunity there. And so it'll be really interesting to see. And then some really cool site tours looking at a École, so it's a reclaimed materials marketplace, and the FINEX, adaptive reuse of an office space. So I think we're pretty much at time. Just to share back our word cloud here. Looks like we had maybe some plants who are plugging the collaboration part, because that's right core to what we see, and no doubt for CERIEC as well. So really interesting to see a diverse group of answers here, and yeah, see that a lot of this kind of circles to what the work that we're trying to do. And so I think we're at time here. I just want to say thank you to our presenters. What really wonderful and interesting work that they've had. Please sign up to our newsletter and CERIEC's too. I believe some of these links have been shared. If not, we can quickly share them again. Of course, please reach out if you're interested in involvement in the hub or in supporting CERIEC's work as well. And then join us in Montreal in April for a circular economy extravaganza. So it'll be great. So thank you very much. And if you'd like to reach out, please feel free to send me an email. Alice, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your participation.
Thanks, everybody. Great content.